there is software that we can use on the with Windows, which will allow you to easily work with configuring the Linux and booting Linux. And that's the Easy BCD. There are versions, free versions of it that you can download. There's also some paid versions that are available for you to download. But in this software, Easy BCD uses this NeoGrub tab to let you modify your Windows bootloader and allow for Linux support. Anyway, when booting from Windows, it would ask you if you wanted to choose between Windows or the Linux operating system. And there you can see a screenshot there of that Easy BCD program, the interface, and it's a really nice tool to use if you're trying to run Windows and Linux and work mostly from the Windows side and booting it. Next, we're going to talk about the Linux initialization, and that would be starting up in that first process called the init daemon. And if we look under the ITSY init tab configuration file, you'll see that that is a file. It's used to determine the number of daemons to be loaded. And anyway, you can take a look at that file. It's easily accessible under the ITSY directory. Next, we're going to talk about run levels. And run levels determines the number and type of daemons loaded into memory and executed. There are seven standard run levels. And the run level command displays your current and most recent level. We're going to use the init command to change the run level in your one of the things that I would suggest and I recommend is using the command to shut down your server. It's safe and quick. Is first of all type in at the command prompt, type in SU and then your password for the root user, which in our case is secret, and then simply type in INIT space 0, and you'll see that level 0 is the halt level, and this will shut your system down efficiently and very cleanly, and all you have to do is type in that init 0 and it will take it from there and shut it's a good way to shut down your machine. Okay, we have run level 1, and this is single user mode. There can only be one person logged into the system, and that would be the root user, of course. And you may want to use this for instance doing maintenance type of things or installs, but it only allows for one user to be logged in, and that being root. 2 is the multi-user mode, and that allows for more than one user, and it does allow you to use system services and most of the most common network services such as logging in, but it does not allow for the specialized services in run level 2. Those specialized services being such as NTF, network file system, HTTPD services, FTP services, those types of specialized services that it doesn't allow for in the level 2. In level 3, you get full network services. Okay, all of those that we mentioned before can run under level 3. That would be your web server, your FTP server, and so on. It also allows for an extended multi-user mode. Level 3 would be if we wanted to run our server as regular, but we did not want that overhead of running the GUI, of having the graphical processes running and such. We could check it down to level 3, and after we learned and run our server just as we would as if we had our graphical services running or our GUI running, except we would not have that overhead as I mentioned. Level 4 is not used. Level 5 is the graphical mode. So we can get the GUI back with changing to run level 5. And in your book, it's going to show you one of your exercises is to change to level 3, and you'll notice your GUI is not running at level 3, and then they'll have you take it back up to run level 5. Run level 6, which would be INIT space 6, simply reboots your system, and it's a quick, easy way for you if you're installing something or you've changed up configuration files you need to reboot, then INIT space 6 would reboot the system. In your init tab file, you'll see there is a line there that says ID, colon, and then a number, and whatever number you put in that is what run level the server will boot to by default or load to by default. It's currently set at 5, and so we're getting that GUI. That's why we're getting that GUI environment for you to work in. We can also configure different daemons to start up at configuring those to run at startup, and we will see that we have different daemon files that are identified with the rc.d. Under the rc.d directory, there are different of these daemons that you can start up, and all of those would be under these under these rc *.d directories. And all of those, most of those, I guess we should say, are the daemons that we're talking about there are able to be stopped, started, or restarted simply from the command line. All of those services or daemons, processes, whatever, able to turn on and off with just a stop and start command. And we can configure those daemons we want to be started automatically through that ITSI rc.d directory, and then under the RC is runtime configuration, and we can start services under that directory automatically at boot. Next we'll talk about X Windows, and X Windows is the core component of your Linux GUI, and it is responsible, that X Windows is responsible for drawing those graphical images in Windows that are displayed on our terminal screens. X Windows is often referred to as X Server, and again it is determining the output, or is the core of the graphical user interface that you see on your screen. The book identifies X clients, and these are programs that tell X Windows how to draw the graphics and display the results. And it also interprets input and output. They do make a point here in the book that it need not run on the same computers as X Windows. It's very flexible, but you could have it that X client running on a different machine. It does not follow the usual client-server model that we talk about. It is more or less, but X client basically, when we talk about X client, it is more or less running behind, if we can say that, like we've got it identified here. A model is that you have input that is sent to the server, the X client kind of working behind that X server and interpreting keyboard input and that type thing. and then it also returning some feedback to the X server. The X server, though, drawing it directly onto your screen. There's also the Windows Manager, and the Windows Manager modifies your look and your feel of your X windows, and that could be such as we wanted a certain colors used. We may want, for instance, we may want our screen to, or our windows, our panels, to have a certain display, a certain characteristic theme to them. Then our X Windows is responsible for doing that, or our X Windows takes care of that. We have to keep in mind here also that we may have multiple users who may be using multiple monitor and output devices as far as screens, and may have it may vary among the people or users that are logged into your X server. So sometimes we can't just take on the one size fits all and on the server, and so that's why we have these with the X client and also the Windows Manager. A couple of other things here. We also know what the desktop environment is. That's that standard set of GUI's tools. When we talk about the KDE and GNOME, those are desktops environments. We're using GNOME, and I think we've seen some screenshots of the GNOME desktop, and then we also have available KDE. Also, there's some Windows managers. We can identify some Windows managers here, and that's the K Windows managers, KWM. It works under KDE. The Qt toolkit. This is software toolkit used with KDE, and these are used primarily by programmers, people who are using or generating programs. On the GNOME desktop, which is our default desktop for Fedora, we have our Windows Manager is called MetaCity, and our toolkit for programmers is the GTK Plus toolkit. If you want, you can also, if you'd like, you can configure your KDE or your GNOME to use different Windows managers. But here you see a list of window managers and also the desktop environments. Anyway, take a look over those. You can see there the MetaCity we just talked about being the default for Fedora. Also, Sawfish, again, another one that you could select from and install from Fedora. Here we have the GNOME desktop environment. Here's a screenshot of that, and you can see that it looks a little bit of a difference. Unfortunately, it's not a color shot, or we could see it even varied more, but you'll notice that for instance, the KDE has a button in the lower left corner of the window, which works and looks a whole lot like the start button on Windows. Our GNOME desktop, is we have our menu options up at the top of this screen. So again, these are just two different environments you can work that we can work in Fedora Linux. Run level 5 starts the GNOME desktop manager GDM. This displays your login screen, and it'll also allows you to choose the desktop environment. We can start the GDM manually or start X, and the start X command is going to start your X Windows and your X Windows Manager, or whatever desktop environment you have specified in the exanet RC file that's in that home directory. And also you can configure X Windows to run various video hardware, such as to work. It may occasionally have some, you'll need to do some fine tuning or to X windows to get it to have your display exactly as you want it. Also remember that your X windows information such as your mouse, your keyboard monitor, and your video adapter card, these are all information that are stored in this file. It's the ITSY X11 xort.config file. We can also use the mouse test command to detect the mouse. Of course, you have to be a root user to run these commands. Also, the system keyboard would be the system config keyboard. And you may get on selecting the keyboard, select those from from menu options. In setting up the display, again working with X windows. There is a tool called the XVid Tune utility, and as you can see here, it allows you to work with the horizontal sync and the vertical sync for your monitor.